Hello, everyone. This is Miss Banuelos. Yes, it is. And I'm here to share with you our lesson for today. Today is Wednesday, January 17th. And thank you for having out your agenda. Thank you to our guest teacher who's here and playing this video for you guys. So in your agenda, you should have written down a couple of things. So one, you have a test coming up on Unit 5. So your homework is to be working on that study guide. Okay, so you have several questions on Unit 5 and as well as a couple of review questions from previous topics or previous units. Completing that will help prepare you for your tests coming up. You also have your 5 topics of ALEKS that you need to make sure that you get completed by Sunday. And then you also have the plan for today. We are going to work on the do now, and then afterwards we will I'll walk you through the notes, the foldable for today. All right, kiddos? Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. Today's do now is to convert the fraction 5/8 into a decimal. So our guest teacher can go ahead and pause the video, give you a few minutes to attempt this problem. And then after a few minutes, we can play the video again, and I will go over the problem to see if you did it correctly. Okay. If you need a refresher on how to convert a fraction to a percent, then you can go ahead and turn to page, let's see, I'm looking, page 58. And on page 58, it'll give you a nice little refresher on how to convert fraction to a decimal. All right, go ahead, take a few minutes to do so. All right, let's go ahead and see how you did. Okay, so that missing numerator you need to fill in was, yep, that was 5. So that's 5/8, and you need to convert that to a decimal. So in order to do that, we're going to have to divide using in and out method. So 5 would be inside, and then 8 outside the divisor. And then let's go ahead and divide. All right, so does 8 divide into 5? Good, it does not. So that one's no good. So since it does not, I'm going to add a decimal and make that a 50. 8 divides into 50. Yep, 6 times, not exactly, but close enough. And that's 48. Let's go ahead and subtract that. But remember, when we subtract, we need to regroup or borrow. And that is a 2. Add a 2, bring it down. 8 divides into 20. Yep, not exactly, but twice. That's 16. Let's subtract again. I need to regroup or borrow. So that's 10, take away 6. Add another 0, and that's 40. 8 goes into 40. Yep, 5 times. And then I am left with 0, so that means I am finished. So 5/8 as a decimal is 0.625. How many of you guys got that? All right, not too bad, not too bad. Okay, let's go ahead and transition over. We are now going to need our notes for today. So we can go ahead and get that passed out. It's called calculating percent of a number. It looks like this. You're just going to fold it. So that way this is the front side. Okay. So the essential question or the focus of today's lesson: how can you find the percent of a number with double number lines? So we're going to continue using double-sided number lines, but this time our problems or, our math problem is going to be something like finding 20% of 50 or finding 85% of 70. Okay, so this is kind of like an example of You're going to the store and something costs $50 and it's 20% off. And you're wondering, well, what is 20% of that amount? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you. There's different strategies, different ways of approaching this problem. But the first strategy is using a double-sided number line. Okay, so we can go ahead and pause the video, make sure the notes get passed out, and once everyone is ready to go, we can play the video back and we can get started with our notes. All right, we should now be ready to take our notes. Okay, so we are calculating the percent. So we're looking at 20% of 50. So what is it that you notice about our number line? Yes, you should notice that the top of our number line is 0% all the way to 100%. Now, the word percent means out of 100, right? So we are going to always have 0% to 100% on the top of our number line. Now, the bottom is going to represent the number. And in this case, we're looking at $50. So we're going to start with 0 and we're going to end with 50. And then we're going to divide up our double-sided number line based off of that $50. So let's go ahead and label. Here we have our percent, and here we are talking about money. Okay, all right, and we are looking for 20% of 50. So 20% is here, which represents at the bottom of 20%, $10. So when our double-sided number line has all the numbers that we need, we can easily identify that 20% of 50 is $10. So let's go ahead and copy that down. All right. Now, the next one is 85%. Okay, so let's take a look at what we notice. So the top half is still with percent. So that starts with 0% and it goes all the way up to 100%. You should also notice 10%, 20, but then also half of 10% is 5, and then we also have a 1%. Okay? So then here, the bottom numbers, this time it is out of $70, so it's still money, and I go all the way up to $70. So 10% of 70, 20%, and so forth. We should also notice that there is a pattern. It is going up 7 each time. So we have a pattern of adding 7 each time. So since our ratio is 10%, $7, you add 10% each time, and our pattern is to add 7 each time, or 7 times 2, 7 times 3, 7 times 4, 7 times 5, 7 times, let's say 7, 7 times 8, and so forth. Okay? So we should notice that pattern still when we're working double-sided number line like our ratio tables. All right, this time we're being asked to find 85%. Well, I don't see 85%, but I know that it is between 80% and 90%, which means that it should be somewhere between $56 and $63. I can guess around 60, but I don't want to guess. I want to use my number line. So what we can do is put 80% and 5% together. So 80% of $70 is $56. And then 5% is $3.50. Make sure you line up the decimals. And then let's go ahead and add them up. So that's 0, 5, 9, and 5. So 85% is $59.50. I had a good educated guess. I said about $60, but exactly we're going to put $59.50. All right, let's go ahead and write that. 85% of 70 is $59.50. Okay. You are going to notice that, oh, that's not too bad, finding percent of a number. Well, you do need to know how to set up the numbers. So that's going to be on the inside of our notes. Here, they were already set up for us. We've already calculated on here what 10% of 70 was, and then the pattern was already there. But we need to know, okay, how do I add the marks evenly? Because you need to space them out as evenly as possible. And also, how do I know what numbers go on each mark? So let's take a look at that. Just going to open that up. And understanding 10% and 1% is going to be very helpful to create your number line. So when calculating percent of a number, it is helpful to know these two percentages. Okay, so let's little refresher. 10%, remember, means to divide by 10. So that basically means, remember, that we move the decimal one position. And 1% is dividing by 100. So that moves the decimal, two positions. Okay, so if I have $50 and I am calculating 10% of that, so that means I would need to move the decimal, or I would take 50 and I would divide it by 10. Doing that, the decimal position is now here. So that is 5. So 10% is 5. 1% would mean dividing by 100 or moving the decimal 2 places. So that would mean 0.50 or 50 cents. Okay, so 10% of 50 is 5. Move it over once. 1%, move it over twice because you're dividing by 100. All right, so now let's do that with 37. So 37, move it over once, it would be 3.7. 37, 1% of 37, I would need to start at the end and divide by 100 or move the decimal place twice. That would be 37 cents. How about 8? I had $8. 10% of that would be moving it over just once, dividing it by 10. So that would be 0.8 or 0.8, same thing. Moving it over twice would be 1, 2. So that is decimal 0.8. So this is 80 cents and this is 8 pennies. Okay. All right, now $11.50. I'm still going to divide by 10, still move it over once. So that is $1.15. The 0 at the end doesn't change the amount, so it could be there or not. 1% divide by 100, so move it over twice, all the way in the front. So it is decimal 1, 1, and 5. Okay. So that was just a quick practice on calculating 10% and 1% of a number. And again, why? Because it is very helpful when you're calculating percent of a number. All right. So let's take a look at A. Now, the challenge is, how do I complete the double-sided number line? So the first thing we need to remember is that the top numbers represent percent. So I have 0% and I have 100%. Now to go from 0 to 100, we're going to go by tens. And we need to try to space it out as evenly as possible. So the halfway mark would be a good start. That would be 50%. Okay, so now we need tick marks. There's a total of 9 in between 10 to 90, and then that's 100. So I need to make 9 tick marks. Okay, I've already done 1 here. So I need to do 4 here, 4 here. That's 8, and then this would be the 9. So I need to add 4 tick marks that are spaced out evenly. So not down the middle, because then that won't give me 4. That actually gives me 3. So let's try to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. Here's like mine. I could be like, I could have spaced that 30% a little bit to the left, a little more even, but that's okay. Same thing on this side. I need to add 4 more tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4. That looks like a little spaced out better. So that's 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%. And then I already have my 100. Okay. So hopefully you're doing this in pencil so that if you need to erase anything, you can. All right, now the bottom, we're talking about money in these practice problems. So we're going to represent that as a $sign. I start off with $0. And in this problem, it says 45. So I need to go to $45. So $0 and $45. Okay, so now remember, we said 10% is helpful to know. So we just practiced calculating 10% of a number. So let's take this number here, 45. And how do I calculate 10%? Divide by 10, which means the decimal moves over 1 position to the left. So that is 4.5, and that would go under 10%. So I have $4.50. We'll change colors. Okay, so then that means my ratio is 10%, $4.50. So the top went by tens. The bottom will go by $4.50. $4.50, $4.50. So if I had $4.50 and I need to add another $4.50, that gives me $9. Add another $4.50, $13.50. Add another $4.50, $18. And I'm going to keep going. Add another $4.50. Keep that pattern going. And then 45. Okay. All right. So I need 21%. Well, I have 21% is going to be somewhere here. Very close to $9. It's for sure more than 9, definitely less than $13.50. But I want to be exact. So I'm going to use 2 of these. I'm going to use the 20%, which is $9. So I'm going to add that number over here. 20% is $9. And then I need to find 1% to make 21%. So here we have 1%. Let's add that in. And 1% of 45. So I'm going to take that 45. Think of my practice or what it says here. To find 1%, I divide by 100 or move the decimal 2 positions. So I'm going to take 45 and I'm going to move 2 positions or divide by 100, and that is 0.45. So that is 45 cents. All right. So that is another one I'm going to need. So I'm going to need that number there, 45 cents. Let's go ahead and add that to here. So 20% was $9. 1% was 45 cents. Add up or line up your decimals. So to get 21%, I'm just going to combine these two. And that makes $9.45. And let's see, that should make sense, right? 21% is just above $9. And the exact amount is $9.45. So what is 21% of 45? It is $9.45. Okay. B wants 35% of 90. So I would like the video paused so that way you can get a chance to set up the numbers. I want to see if you can set up the percentages and see if you can set up the amounts down here at the bottom. So pause the video. Let's give it a try. If you're struggling, that's okay, but I want you to try. Use pencil so you can erase it if needed. And then once we play back the video, then I'll go over it so that you can see if you did it correct. Okay? All right, so go ahead. You're doing B. All right, so let's see how we did. So I already have my percentages set up. Now what I want to walk through with you is to see if we have the numbers. So here's the money. Start with $0, and 100% represents the $90 in the problem. All right, what is 10% of 90? Remember, divide it by 10 or move the decimal once over. Yep, that is 9. Okay, now from there, we have to add 9 each time. Or, remember, multiply by 2, multiply by 3, times 4, times 5, times 6, times 7, times 8, times 9. Okay, or add 9 each time. So let's see how far you got. So 9, 18, 27, 'Good. Keep saying them. All right, there it is. Okay, now that we set that up, let's go ahead and find 35% of 90. So 35% is going to be in between right here. So your amount should make sense. It's going to be somewhere between $27 and $36. If I had to guess, probably say around 32. But remember, no guessing. Let's be exact. So I'm going to combine 30% and 5%. So the 30% is $27. So I'm going to put that here, $27. And then 5%. Well, I got to find it. So 5% is right in the middle of 0 and 10, the halfway mark. So that means I need the halfway mark of 0 and 9. So take half of it, of 9, and it is $4.50. And I'm going to use that one. $4.50. Line up your decimals. Make sure you're lined up neatly so that way you're adding, there's no minor errors. So I have 0 plus 0, 0 plus 5. I have my decimal, 7 and 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, regroup, and then 3. So I have $31.50. Let's see, if that's 35%, $31.50. Yep, that falls in between, and that is correct. All right, last one. 7% of 180. So here I already have the percentages written in for you. Now the amounts. The amount of $0 to 180. Do a little pause to have you think. Okay. Start off with 10% always. So think, what is 10% of 180? All right, say it out loud. Yep, that is $18. Now I need to add 18 each time, or multiply by 2, multiply by 3, multiply by 4. Okay. Go ahead and do as many as you can. And now check it or finish it. So it goes up by 18 each time. You could have also used the multiplication chart in your agenda. Okay, so now let's calculate 7% of 180. So 7% is, that's less than 10. So that's less than $18. So I didn't even need to fill in all these other numbers. So let's calculate 5%. 5% is half of 10, so half of 18 is $9. All right. 1%. Oh yeah, 1% means I move the decimal place 2 times, or I divide by 100. So I start at the very end, and I move it over twice. So that's $1.80. So I really only needed 10% to calculate 5, and then I was already able to find 1% by divided by 100. So in reality, I didn't even need to fill in all this part. Okay, so 5% is $9. 1% is $1.80, and I need another 1%, because remember, I'm calculating 7. And 7% is going to fall somewhere right here. So let's see. So it has to be more than $9, but less than $18. So let's see what we get. Add them up. 16, regroup, 9, 10, 11, 12. $12.60 would be right here. $12.60. And that is our answer. So questions like this, especially preparing you for 7th grade, where it's asking you to calculate something called discount. If, let's say, shoes. I want some shoes, the new Air Jordan, Nikes, I don't know, pair of shoes, and they cost $180. And they're on sale for 7% off. And you want to know, well, how much is that discount? Well, you're able to calculate it one way, doing what we did here, using the double-sided number line to say, you know what? That's $12.60 off of that total price of $180. Okay? So this here, You're going to hang on to it, and we will glue it when I return. But this was being able to calculate percent of a number. If there's any time remaining, you are to start working on the study guide that was given to you yesterday. It's a blue piece of paper. Or you can work on Alex if there's any time left over. Okay? Other than that, happy Wednesday, modified day, and have a great one.